hopefully the sound is working. If there's anyone actually watching, let me know if the sound is working or not, because before YouTube was saying that I had a bit rate of 0, which means I would have sounded like a like a chipmunk. What I really want to do today is just kind of go over the level 2, the next step of the project. So actually building the outcome. Whoever just joined the chat there, can you just, if there's no audio or the audio sounds really weird, please type something down here. Because if it is, then I'll have to restart it again. I was having issues before and I've restarted it a couple of times now. Hopefully this will fix it. Okay, cool. All right. So what I want to talk about is just the next step. So you've done your plan, or should have, and you've probably been working on building the outcome, or should be. You don't necessarily have to fully follow the plan. Okay, you may be able to make changes to it now. But what you want to do is follow it fairly closely. And these are the things here. So building the outcome, what you actually need to document and what evidence you should provide for that. I'm going to cover the programming one later because there's a big difference between the programming one and the database one. The programming one is different to the database one and the media one, which are very similar. So what I want you to be thinking about today, and we'll only go for about 10 minutes today, is what kind of questions you have, because I can cover a lot of answers live on here. I can go over them in Blender, how to do things, how to do stuff in Godot, how to do stuff in Django, and then put them up. I can do that live or whatever, but I may not be able to do it today. So if you give me your questions, then I get time to prepare, and then I can go through it with you. But for the digital media one, this is the developer database, and this is the digital media one. And if I put them side by side, we'll see as we go down to the next page that they're very similar. Okay, so the digital media one, use appropriate tools and techniques for the purpose and for the end users. This is a horrible way to phrase that, but what it means is that you're using tools that are appropriate to develop your outcome. Okay, so if you're using Blender, well, that's an appropriate tool. If you're using a graphics editor to do some texturing, that's an appropriate tool. What evidence do you need to provide? Just a screenshot, just a document with some evidence in it. It should be obvious that you are actually using Blender when you turn in the file. So this kind of thing is minimal. There's minimal evidence required for that. Applying appropriate data integrity and testing procedures. And this is the same on both, applying appropriate data integrity and testing procedures. So data integrity for a 3D model is not a big issue, but testing procedures, making sure that the normals are correct, all that stuff, making sure that it looks good in different lighting, all those things are important for the 3D model, especially since you're going to export it into Unity, Godot, those kind of engines. And so testing it in there is important. Using relevant conventions for the media type. For the database one, data integrity is important. So making sure that any data that you enter in is actually validated. And you can do that with the Django form validation automatically. So that's an important thing to do. Evidence of it. It should be obvious that you've provided the evidence, but for the 3D modeling, you guys will have to provide some screenshots of it working in Unity. You don't, or Godot. You don't actually need to give me a Godot file or a Unity file. You just have to show that it has been done and has worked. Explaining relevant implications. This is the same for both the database and the 3D modeling. And you may have already done some in your planning, in which case they're exactly the same and you can just copy and paste it across. So there's some examples of relevant implications. What you might want to do is to rank them in terms of most important to least important, and then just focus on the top 3 and write a little bit about them. So you do actually need to write that bit up, explaining relevant implications. I'll put a link to these standards on the classroom if they're not already there. Merit goes to using information from testing to improve the quality of the outcome. Now, a lot of the stuff that you've done, the tutorials that you've done, that is all testing. So you've actually done a lot of this stuff already. And improving the quality of the outcome, well, by trialing those different methods, you actually are improving the quality of the outcome because you're learning different techniques that you didn't know before that you can apply to your outcome. What evidence do you need for that? You only need to provide the evidence that you've done some tutorials on that, and then write up a little bit what you learned from it and what you can apply to your outcome from it. Applying relevant conventions to improve the quality of the outcome, that should be obvious from it, and I'll be able to see if it hasn't been done, like if you've got really weird modeling techniques or too many faces and stuff. That's something that I can check. I will be talking about the programming stuff soon, so if you are not doing 3D modeling or the database, then you can just listen for a bit. Addressing relevant implications. You don't actually need to write much about this. Okay, it should be obvious in your outcome that you've explained them, and then it should be obvious in your outcome that you've addressed them. Okay, so if you decide to rip all your graphics from some other program, then you've probably not addressed intellectual property. It doesn't matter if you highlighted it as one of the main ones at the top here when you explained them. You should be addressing a lot of these implications. Okay, the main ones for you guys are going to be functionality, usability, aesthetics, end user considerations, probably intellectual property, and I wouldn't worry too much about those ones in there. They can be justified if you need to. And if there's any evidence that depending on when we get back to school, apparently it's maybe after the 29th, which is still 2 weeks away, but who knows? It could go on longer, it could be shorter. I haven't heard any news about when that's going to happen. Down here, so we've got to look at the excellence criteria. It is the same pretty much for merit and excellent merit in both of these. So the merit for the database one is once again using information from testing, so any tutorials you've done, how you're going to apply that to your outcome. Structuring, organizing, and querying the data logically. Well, this comes down to how you create your models in Django, how you store that information, so are you giving it proper names and so on, and querying it is pulling the information out of the database. Addressing relevant implications, once again, you don't actually need to document that, it should be evident in your outcome. And then lastly, and this is the same for both, again, very similar for both, iterative improvement throughout the design, development, and testing process. What this iterative development means is that you should be able to develop part of the outcome and then test that it works and then add to it. And then test that works and then add to it again and then test that works, etc. Okay, you will need to provide some evidence for that, even if it's saving multiple versions. So when something is complete in the database and something works, maybe the front page works and or the login data works or whatever, you save that version, make a copy of it, and then work on it. Same with the 3D models. You've done a model, it looks really good. You're going to add more models to that, or you're going to add more detail to that, save another version, and add that in, and that'll be enough to provide the evidence that you are doing the iterative improvement. There's some stuff down here. So things advanced techniques within a 3D model. These are only examples, and a lot of these, they're not really relevant to it. This is more relevant to like creating a website kind of thing here. So using a third-party library, using composite effect, these kind of things here. But I'm not worried. I think that most advanced techniques, if you're using UV mapping, that is an advanced technique. So that'll be fine. And then examples of efficient tools and techniques include management of assets. Okay, that's pretty important. You're going to have a lot of different 3D models. You're going to have a lot of different components in those 3D models, and you should be naming them appropriately. Same with textures, naming them appropriately. If you get them off textures.com and they have that really long texture name, rename it so it's something useful to you. Okay, if they've got normal maps, what's the other one? The diffuse map, and then something else, the height map, then make sure that you distinguish between them in the name. If you're doing a website, so I know there's one student doing a website, then you're going to be using style sheets. So that's fine, you'll be using style sheets. Commenting in HTML, it's probably not that necessary. Validation, optimization of media assets, reusing objects. So if you've got an image in your website, reuse it multiple times. If you've got a texture that you can reuse that multiple times. And then for the database, it's very, you can't not do this stuff really. Linking data in related tables or nodes. If you've got more than one model, that's going to happen. Writing custom queries, you will do that. Customizing presentation of the data, you'll do that by showing the user a web page with the data in there. Using custom forms to add user input, you'll do that. And you'll do that. So that's not a problem there. All right, so that's that one there. What I want you to be thinking about if you're doing one of these is some questions that you might have. They could be really specific in Blender. They could be related to the project itself. It's up to you. I have given you those kind of requirements as well, the tasks. So if you're doing the Blender thing, I think there was like 25 different models that you had to make of different complexity. They didn't all have to be really detailed, but you were making that asset pack, so you had to have quite a few different models in there. And if you were doing the database, we talked about those. If you don't have access to that, let me know and I will put those up on the classroom. So the actual tasks that are up there. I thought we had access to them, maybe you don't. But I'm going to go over the programming stuff now. So if you were only here looking at that stuff and you're going to think of some questions and email me, I'll look at them tomorrow when I go live again, same time, 11 o'clock. And the programming one I'm going to go over now. So the programming one is different. You do not have to do relevant implications. Okay, so what you do need to do is write code that performs a specific task. So if you've designed your little Godot game, then your code has to make the game run. Using advanced techniques in a suitable programming language. What does that mean? I'll get to that in a minute. Setting out the program code clearly and documenting the program with comments. Okay, so the program has to have comments in it. It does need comments. Testing and debugging the program to ensure that it works on a sample of expected cases. Now, there's not actually any documentation required for this. It should be evident to me that if I test your program and it works, you've also tested your program and it works on expected cases. But if I come along and I go, okay, well, I can jump through this wall, maybe that's not meant to happen, well, then you probably haven't done this part here, which is the merit bit. For your own sake, it might be a good idea to document your testing, just so that you can show me, hey, this is what I actually did. And maybe you didn't test everything, because it does say work on a sample of both. So you can't possibly test everything in the program. We don't have a whole team of testers here or QA guys to make sure that we have everything done. So it's only a sample of both expected cases and boundary cases. But advanced techniques, what's an advanced technique? These are advanced techniques. These are things that your program needs to do. You can't not do those, so just ignore them. Examples of advanced programming techniques include modifying data stored in collections. You don't have to do this, but you may. Using additional non-core libraries. Responding to events generated by a graphical user interface. Creating methods, functions, or procedures that use parameters and/or return values. Now, I'm not sure that most of you are going to have, judging by what you've planned, are going to have an actual list or something. Some of you may have, and it only needs to be trivial. So it doesn't have to be like a huge player inventory or something. It could be something simple that gets modified, but you don't necessarily have to have it. Don't worry about this one. And creating methods, functions, or procedures that use parameters and/or return values. You're probably going to use those, but if you're not sure what it means, send through a question and I'll answer it and give an example. But you will be writing your own functions, more than likely, but using parameters. Will they? They should. They don't have to return values, but they can. Or they don't have to accept parameters, but they should return values. So it's kind of one end or the other. This one you will do though, responding to events generated by a graphic user interface. Okay, so you're going to be doing your menu and it's going to have things on there that you're going to respond to. Using additional non-core libraries. You will be doing that. You'll notice in Godot that, if I load Godot here, let's just open up this one here. So the basic language of Godot is just kind of like Python. But then anytime you do this here at the top, it's like an import. In Python, it's import navigation 2D. In here, it's extends navigation 2D. So what it means is that you can use all the navigation 2D functions, which are things like this, to add functionality to the program. So that's actually how that works. Okay, so in Godot, that's what the equivalent of that would be, additional non-core libraries. So normally it's like if, then, func, or def, or whatever it is in Python, but that would be using additional non-core libraries. Now to get excellence, you need to make sure that it's these things, make the program flexible and robust. And then down here, these are some examples of it. So using actions, conditions, control structures, methods, functions, or procedures effectively, checking import data for validity, correctly handling expected boundary and invalid cases, and using constants, variables, and derived values in place of literals. So I can give you one very quick example of this if I load Godot again. Let's just load this one here. Where's it gone? I don't know where that went. I think I might have accidentally closed out of it as it was loading. Let's load. I'll just load the one at the top. I know it worked. There we go. So if I go into the script for this. Okay, so right at the top here, this is a constant. Okay, there's no constants in Godot, but constants, if you want to write them as a constant, they are all uppercase. Okay, that's just kind of tells the person who's reading it that this is a constant value. It doesn't change during the program. Okay, so he set the constant character speed to 400. Then later on, he can use character speed multiple times throughout. Or in this case, he only used it once. But if he was going to use it throughout, he wouldn't have to change that value everywhere else. It just gets changed once. We've talked about this before in year 10, 11. So using those kind of things there, setting all your values up at the top, turn speed equals 40, that kind of stuff. That would be a variable. Okay, I can reuse turn speed throughout the program. Pretty straightforward. So that's all the assessment requirements in there. I'm going to put these on the classroom now. So I don't actually think I have these. I will just link to them on the website. So if I go classwork, create material, and assessment standard. These are achievement standards. So if I add a link, and I add a link to this one. Let's bring that over there, that over there, that over there. So that's that one there. I'll make sure you know what the names of them are as well in a sec. 91893 and then number 2. So 91896 is programming, 91893 is media, 91892 is database. I think that's it. I'll just double check. Yeah, that's it. So I will post that. I don't think there's anyone else doing anything other than that, but I think that I will finish up there. And if there's any questions, please email me. You all know my email. You can just write them on Classroom somewhere. I'll collect them all up. If there's a question that you did email me and I didn't answer in the last week through email, then write it again so I can answer it in a video tomorrow. I might go for a bit longer tomorrow, but do email those questions through. If you've got really specific questions about something you're working on, email that through as well, okay? And I will try to cover them all on here. Until then, I will see you tomorrow. Same time, I'll be up at 11 o'clock.